Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode of the Actor, Actress, Director Showcase. My name is Sean Waltz-Krug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. Today's episode, we are talking about TC legend Tom Cruise, a week out before his big release for Top Gun Maverick. We also got one of Hollywood's most favorite directors. I wouldn't say our favorite, but he's one of the most favorite ones out there, Quentin Tarantino, and actress of the 90s, early 2000s, not so much lately, Julia Roberts. What do we think about the three that we're talking about today? Obviously, we knew we were going to talk about TC Legend for pretty much the beginning of the year, but
yeah. Well, this comes down to one of those things where there's actors and actresses who are maybe your favorites, or maybe you really like some of the projects they do. And there's other ones who are really just Hollywood stars, true icons. I mean, and Tom Cruise obviously is one of the biggest stars of all time. Julia Roberts, as far as actresses go, like you said, she doesn't work so much anymore. I know she has family and stuff, so she's kind of backed off on her movies, but she's still she's like an all-time movie star as far as actresses go. And Quentin Tarantino, something you don't see a lot is directors who become basically stars, giant celebrities, and he's definitely one of them. It's the whole cult of Tarantino.
Yeah, it's with directors. I would say it's there are, at least by today's standards, there are about 5 or 6 directors out there that are bigger than their movies. It's not necessarily the movie, it's the director, and then they're making let's go see that new Quentin Tarantino movie. It's not
who's in it, what it's about, who cares? It's Tarantino.
Yes, it's Tarantino. Same thing with Tarantino, Spielberg, Nolan. Cameron. Whenever he finally starts making movies that aren't Avatar.
That's Bay, probably the end of the list right there. Just about.
Right. Yeah. I'd say Bay.
Actually, definitely know what you're getting in a Bay film. Yeah.
Technically, M. Night a little bit, but that's more or less to kind of crap on him than it is, to praise him. But yeah, it's like with Tarantino, and we'll get to Tarantino. We're gonna start with TC Legend, Tom Cruise. Obviously, next week, Top Gun Maverick comes out. I feel like we've been waiting for that movie for 3 years, 4 years now.
Because we have.
Yeah. Exactly. It's the new Mutants. But and this is one of those things where I think you and I, we said this in our anticipation episode back in January. It's like, I don't think you and I were necessarily excited for it. We just wanted to just get the fuck out. Come out already. We're tired of waiting this. We're tired of seeing the same old trailer. Just release it, please, so we can stop seeing the trailer for Top Gun Maverick. Then they released the new trailer, which we did watch. And now this buzz, this word of mouth is going around about Top Gun Maverick that I feel like it's starting to get a little too big for itself.
I agree, because
with so much.
I tend to not let the buzz get to me much, because so often you hear movies hyped up and then they just don't live up to it. And this one, like you said, I was kind of I want to check this out. I like Top Gun. We'll see what this new one's like. But I was never like, yay, the new Top Gun movie's finally coming out. And especially with all the delays, like you said, we was like, just put it out already. But then once it had screened a few places, and you started hearing not only Oscar buzz, but best movie of the year and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, some of that's probably hyperbole. People might be overpraising it somewhat. But honestly, I feel like with the sources it's coming from and how I'm not really hearing anything too negative about it, I think it might be merited, and I hope it is. But we'll get into that.
I'm worried that it's getting hyped up so much that everyone, not you and me, because you and I are pretty good at tempering our expectations because we've been burned many, many times before. Is that I feel like after the first weekend, there's going to be a lot of backlash. Unless it is great and it blows everyone away. But I feel like it's going to get that Mad Max Fury Road kind of thing where so many people are going to be like, oh my God. And then you're going to have the haters going, it's not that great, guys. It's not that good. You guys are all just, and it's going to have this back and forth because that's the way the world is now. If people like something so much, then here comes the other half that's just going to say, talk shit about it. But then there's also these people, like I said, they're already talking this movie up so much that a lot of people are going to go in with these expectations all the way up here, and they're not going to get met. And then you're just going to start seeing the scores drop, and you're going to start seeing some bad reviews, and it's going to hurt it in the long run. Hopefully, it's the previous where it is great, and we just have to deal with the trolls that just want to go out there and be trolls, and it actually is a lot of fun, which we'll figure that out next week when we shoot the review for it. Right. But Tom Cruise in itself, this is a guy, it's funny because a lot of people ask me, and I think we were kind of thrown into this conversation last night. I didn't participate in the conversation, but you did, where someone asked like, "What's our 10 favorite actors?" and stuff like that, and I was like, I didn't want any part of that. You posted yours, I didn't. But Tom Cruise for me is one of those actors. I love Tom Cruise. Have I seen all of his movies? No, because there's just so many. But I appreciate the hell out of Tom Cruise, and I have been defending Tom, I feel like, for the last decade, if not longer. Ever since the whole Scientology, jumping on the couch on Oprah.
That's when he hit his height. It was 2005. He was promoting War of the Worlds.
Because I'll bring up Tom Cruise to somebody, and they'll be like, "Ugh, Tom Cruise." I'm like, okay, hold on. Are you bashing Tom Cruise because you don't like his movies? Or are you bashing Tom Cruise because of all the like internet and like publicity and all that kind of stuff that they kind of are throwing at him with the Scientology crap? They go, just tired of hearing his name. It's like, cool, but you're not saying anything bad about his movies. So do you hate Tom Cruise, the actor, the movie star, or do you hate Tom Cruise the way, wow, I almost said telemarketers. That's not the right
tabloids?
word. The tabloids and all that stuff are portraying to you. Because yes, that Tom Cruise, not that fun. That Tom Cruise is annoying. That Tom Cruise is kind of gets bashed a lot. But that Tom Cruise is also not around anymore. They kind of let that stuff. He weathered that storm, and now Tom Cruise is fucking Tom Cruise again. He's TC Legend, and I had to defend him for the longest time because I'm just like, look at his movies. Granted, not all of his movies are great, but it's not because of Tom. It's just the movies aren't that good. But granted, he is a, like a lot of people say now, there is no real movie stars anymore. There's no movies that people are going to. I gotta go see the kind of like I always say with the directors. You're going to a Tarantino movie because it's a Tarantino movie. A lot of people are saying that there are no actors that you're going to see the latest Tom Cruise movie because it's Tom Cruise. You're going to a movie because the story's good or it's got a good ensemble cast. Tom Cruise is still Tom Cruise. You're going to see a movie, especially if it's an action film, because A, Tom Cruise did the stunts. But B, it's because Tom Cruise is still a bona fide movie star, at least in my eyes. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, he's the very definition of a movie star, in every sense of the word, because not only has he had, just decades of successful films, but he is also the hardest working person in Hollywood. This is a man with this legendary work ethic, and he demands everybody else on his sets have that same work ethic, and he drives it because he honestly, there are people who consider like it a job. Harrison Ford has always bugged me like that, where he's like, people ask him about it, he's like, it's just a job, it's just some role I did, I don't care about that movie. Tom Cruise is always trying to make the best product possible for his audiences, and if that means trying to work through pandemic or whatever it has to do, he does it. He does his own stunts to make it a special experience. He is the biggest proponent of, no, this movie has to be seen in theaters. He will not let his movies go to streaming. And this is just a guy who, in every sense of the word, is like personifies movies and as one of the biggest acting stars in the world.
And will always go above and beyond to try to make everything look as real as possible. Like I said, with the Mission Impossible franchise, which I think without the Mission Impossible franchise, would Tom Cruise be as big as he is currently? No.
Not anymore. Honestly, as I look back on it, Tom Cruise is not like the biggest blockbuster star. I mean, he's had big hits. Top Gun, the year it came out, was the #1 grossing film of the year, and by today's standards, it's made out like $176 million in 1986 dollars. It'd be gigantic now. But other than that, aside from the Mission Impossible movies, most of his movies, I mean, a lot of them don't even break $100 million, or they just barely break $100 million. So he's consistently successful, but he's not like this big.
And that's the word. That's the word I was going to use. He might not be top box office, but he is consistent.
Mm-hmm.
He will come out with movies that you will talk about, you will remember, and you'll rewatch. It may not be in terms of box office numbers, but in terms of DVDs, VHSs, on TV, streaming, you will watch Tom Cruise over and over and over again. Why? Because his stories are fun. Like, his movies are fun, or if they are the serious ones, he does a great job in them. Or when he'll go and do something like Tropic Thunder, where it's like, have you guys seen Tom Cruise in this? Like, it's insane. And he makes you want to see his stuff.
Well, that's the other thing I think has made him last so long, is because he does such a variety of projects. He'll do some deep period drama and go from that into a goofy comedy like Tropic Thunder or Rock of Ages or something like that. And he'll go do his action movies like the Top Guns or the Mavericks, things like that, and everything in between. He covers the whole spectrum.
He's the one actor, and I think there's only one category I haven't seen him pop up in. Because I was thinking, I was like, there's very, very few actors you can say has done every spectrum of film. The only thing I don't think he's done is animated. Has he done animated?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because it's Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise don't do animated films. You want Tom Cruise front and center, but he's
they were paying for Tom Cruise for getting his face on screen.
Exactly. I mean, he's done the comedy, he's done the drama, he's done the action, he's done horror. The only thing he hasn't done is the animation. I mean, he's always got the full fist of Hollywood.
And I honestly don't blame him, because there'll be time for that when he's older. But apparently he made some deal with the devil where he's 60 years old now, or he's about to turn 60, and he still looks like he did when he was 35 or something.
Exactly. He still looks super young. For me, Tom Cruise, let's start with you on this. When was the first time that you saw Tom Cruise, but when was the first time that you took notice of Tom Cruise?
I think they're actually kind of the same, and
really?
it's such a cliche answer, but for me it's Top Gun, because I was alive then. I want to say 13 when it came out, and it came out, and that thing came out, and it was just this behemoth. I mean, the entire summer and into fall and even winter, because I mean, it took forever for things to come out on like home videos. Things played in theaters forever. Top Gun was just like this pop culture event. And it was everywhere. I saw it many times in theaters when it came out on VHS tape. I watched it so many times on there, and it's the first time. I don't think I'd heard of him before then, or if I did, I mean, at 13, I didn't really know who a lot of actors.
Well, before Top Gun, you had The Outsiders, Risky Business, All the Right Moves, and Legend.
Yeah, so like I may have heard his name in passing, but I at the time had not seen any of those movies. This is the first movie of his I ever saw, but at the same time, it's not the first time I saw him was not in a supporting role. He was the star of this gigantic movie. And oddly, I looked, when I was looking at his filmography, I looked like after Top Gun, he followed that up. He didn't make a lot of huge films. He followed up with like Color of Money, Cocktail he starred in, but it was not a big film. Rain Man was probably the first place where he started getting some.
Well, didn't he get nominated for Rain Man?
To it? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He got some prestige to it. He got, people were going to realize he wouldn't just be a popular movie kind of guy. So I mean, Top Gun's probably where I first noticed him and first took note of him, but I don't think he became the Tom Cruise that we know today, like just this iconic person, until honestly, almost like Interview with the Vampire and Mission Impossible, like that 94, 96 era was when it kind of became like Tom Cruise was like this person.
Yeah, for me, like I said, because I'm younger, it was. Like, granted, when I was a kid, was Top Gun playing in my house? Yes. But did I understand who Tom Cruise was at that time? No. I would say the first movie I probably paid attention to of his, and it wasn't because of Tom, though, was Days of Thunder. Because the mellow yellow car. I paid attention to the colorful car, and Tom Cruise was the guy behind it. Once again, didn't really recognize Tom Cruise in that. I know Days of Thunder, the mellow yellow car. So technically, first time I saw him, when I was young, I probably caught Top Gun on TV with my parents watching it, but wasn't paying attention. But Days of Thunder was when I first probably saw Tom Cruise and went, oh, okay. First time I probably took notice of him was also probably Interview with the Vampire. Granted, The Firm and A Few Good Men, Far and Away, I think I heard of him because it was like, oh, it's him and his wife, which that was also in Days of Thunder. But Interview with the Vampire was probably with him was Lestat, right? Lestat. That was probably the first movie where I was like, oh damn, who is this guy? And then you realize, oh, that's the guy who did this and this and this and this and this. And to me, that was when Tom Cruise became Tom Cruise. And then yes, he follows it up with Mission Impossible. And then for me, when he finally hit like the top tier, was Jerry Maguire. I mean, and that's for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, Mission Impossible was Mission Impossible, but I know a lot of people, when the first one came out, a lot of people were like, oh, if you don't pay attention to the first 10 minutes, you're going to be lost the whole rest of the movie. And that's why I didn't watch the first Mission Impossible for the longest time, because, yeah, I was a kid, and keeping my attention on it for the first 10 minutes, like, focused, that wasn't going to happen. But Jerry Maguire came out, Show Me the Money, You Had Me at Hello, all that kind of stuff. That was, to me, was his Hollywood star film, where he basically came out and he's like, I am a blockbuster success. I'm a blockbuster star, even though he had already been nominated for Oscars by that point, and and he was kind of doing the prestigious films with like Born on the 4th of July and Rain Man and The Firm and all that kind of stuff. But Jerry Maguire, he hit rom-com territory. And that's when he got everyone's eyes. He got the girls, he got the guys, because you had football with the mix, Cuba Gooding Jr., that's also another situation. But he had also, like I said, the iconic lines in that movie that he still probably hears to this day. So for me, it was probably Interview with the Vampire was probably the first time I took notice of him, and Jerry Maguire was when he was like, okay, like that's fucking Tom Cruise right there. But
yeah, because one thing, like I was talking about how he does all different genres. The other thing I think he does very smartly is throughout his whole career, and I thought about when you said with Jerry Maguire, throughout his whole career, he has made a point of just working with like all different directors. He's like, if he sees a director who's doing a great job, he seeks out that director and says, hey, we want to do something together. He did that with Spielberg. Spielberg and Tom Cruise hooked up and like, we're going to make a movie together. They didn't know what they were going to make yet, and they eventually settled on War of the Worlds, which was not either of their best movies, but it was still fine. Well, and Minority Report, of course. But that's what he does. He like just seeks out the best directors, and even within a franchise, like Mission Impossible, for the longest time, the thing was every single one had a different director, which kind of gives you see different approaches on this kind of the same kind of material. Now, eventually, he's kind of settled on Christopher McQuarrie, who's directed him in like 4 films now. He's written like another 4 on top of that Tom Cruise has starred in. So apparently, they have a real good shorthand together. But I think one of the things that has helped his career have the longevity it has is he does try and work with everybody, whether it be Spielberg and Kubrick and Cameron Crowe for Jerry Maguire and all these different people.
Yeah, and like that's the thing with Tom is that, like I said, he keeps things fresh. I mean, yes, now he's kind of in that Mission Impossible mode where he's just making Mission Impossible movies over and over and over again. But I mean, when he was young, he was basically kind of playing the pretty boy kind of character with Outsiders, Risky Business, All the Right Moves, all that kind of stuff. Then he went into kind of more prestigious films with Rain Man, Born on 4th of July, Far and Away, heck, even A Few Good Men in The Firm, technically. Then in the 90s, that's where he was kind of take notice with the Mission Impossibles, Jerry Maguire. He did the artsy Eyes Wide Shut, Magnolia, Vanilla Sky. But in the 2000s, that's where he was just kind of all over the place. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's like that was just like you never quite knew what you were gonna get with Tom. I mean, you got Minority Report, which I love that movie so much. I watched it the other day. It was on TV, and I was like, I'm mad at myself. That's been so damn long since I've watched Minority Report because this movie's freaking awesome. Yeah. And then he'll pop up like I said, he cameoed in Austin Powers and Goldmember. Just a little scene right there, and it was great. I remember watching that for the first time, going, "Oh my god, they got Tom Cruise to play this little part!" Like it was great. And then hands down one of my favorite films of all time, definitely in my top 100. Last Samurai. We talked about it on the Weekend Crusaders. It was one of those movies where Tom had been out quite a while. Was this around when everything was going on, or was this before?
Last Samurai was what year? It was 2003, I think. Yeah. I kind of came to a head at 2005 with the War of the Worlds because that's when he started dating Katie Holmes, did the jumping on the couch thing and all that stuff. Because he was out promoting that and she was promoting Batman Begins. But there's kind of that early 2000s era where a lot of the Scientology things like that. But but he is one of those people that whatever you think of his weird personal life and personal beliefs, his work is a whole different thing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Last Samurai was a masterclass in film, and his performance was amazing in that. Also, one of my favorite performances of his. The movie itself, it's not necessarily, I mean, he is one of the leads, but I think everyone kind of goes with the other actor for this. But his performance in Collateral with Michael Mann and Jamie Foxx, I loved his performance in that film. Definitely one of my favorite Tom Cruise performances. But then, yes,
I want to say it's the first time he ever. I was going to say played a villain, but I guess kind of in Interview with the Vampire, I guess, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he was a villain in that. But technically, yes, I kind of can. That was the first. When I saw Collateral, I think I forgot about Interview with the Vampire because I was like, oh my God, Tom Cruise is a villain. And he was great. He was great as I'm blanking on the hitman's name in the movie, but he was so good in that movie in Collateral. I think did we talk about Collateral during Weekend Crusaders?
No, because I have not seen that movie in a long time.
I watched it last year, and part of me thought it might have been for Weekend Crusaders, but Collateral is so damn good. Then we got War of the Worlds, which, like you said, it was fine. I mean, it wasn't great, but I didn't hate it like everyone else did. I think it was just more or less the ending wasn't that great.
Yeah, I thought he was good in it.
Yeah, and then like I said, that was during that whole time where everyone was like down on Tom Cruise. No one wants to talk about Tom Cruise. No one wants to see Tom Cruise. So what does he do with that? Tropic Thunder. He comes back in a position that you had to kind of do the stop and go, that's not Tom. No, it's not. And you go, that is Tom Cruise. And he plays a character that I don't think anyone would ever expected him to come through with. And he was hilarious. He was uncanny in it, to the point where people thought that wasn't Tom Cruise. That was an actual real life person. And he played it off that way too. Like I said, the brilliance of Tom Cruise, he reinvented himself with this character. What's the character's name? I'm blanking on his character's name.
I don't remember. I was never that impressed with it, honestly, myself. I thought it was amusing, but for me, it totally was. Oh, here's Tom Cruise dressed up in a funny fat suit and a bald head. And I mean, it was Les Grossman. Sorry.
Les Grossman. That's right.
So it was like, it was an amusing cameo, but I was never all that. I didn't love it like most people did.
I love that character. I thought that character was hilarious. but yeah, and then that's kind of where we started to get Tom Cruise. I almost say he kind of went back to the 90s in a sense, where he started kind of doing the comedies, the rom-coms, stuff like that. He was kind of refinding himself again. He kind of had to, basically like a phoenix rise from the ashes of all the stuff he fell through with Katie Holmes, Scientology, and then kind of had to rebuild his stock back up. Mission Impossible, I mean, like I said, 1 and 2 kind of almost killed the franchise. And then 3 came back roaring with J.J. Abrams, and then kind of didn't have a lot for a while. And then you had Ghost Protocol pop up. And then also that's when Mission Impossible was like, I love Mission Impossible 3. I think Mission Impossible 3 is actually probably my favorite one. I really loved what they did.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's very good. It restored right up there. It restored most people's faith in the franchise. Yeah, exactly.
And then a lot of people didn't think we were going to get another one because he stopped for a while. And then Protocol came, and then that's where like, this is like Fast and the Furious. We're going to keep getting these. We're going to keep shoving these out. But unlike the Fast and Furiouses, Mission Impossible is good, and it's continually been good with each established film after that. Unlike Fast and the Furious, where it's starting to get. Even you who love the Fast.
I enjoyed them all up till 9. 9 sucked.
Yeah, 9. To me, it started to fall off after 8. Pretty much after they written Paul Walker off. That to me is kind of where it fell off. But, I mean, look. I mean, after Tropic Thunder, you had Valkyrie, which kind of Oscar baity kind of film. Night and Day with
totally underrated, in my opinion.
Totally underrated. It was on TV the other day with James Mangold directing, who was one of my favorite directors. That movie is so fun. It's such a fun film. That I don't think a lot of people saw it because I think that was still when people were not really Tom Cruise pro at that time. Definitely, guys, check that one out if you guys have never seen that one. That's a fun film. And then one of your favorite performances of his
Rock of Ages.
Is what?
Are you talking about Rock of Ages?
I'm talking about Rock of Ages.
Not everyone loves Rock of Ages, and I get it. I totally get it. It's a musical. It's like 90s heavy metal songs made into a musical. It's not going to be for everyone. But Tom Cruise in this movie, because people have this idea of Tom Cruise like this stuffy actor, like I'm too good.
He's stuck up, he's an asshole.
He's totally just plain, he's just clearly having a great time. Now he also clearly has some auto tune and things to help his voice singing, but as far as his character is just he's just a ton of fun. And Tom Cruise it's nice to see him just kind of let loose once in a while.
It was you finally got me to watch that last year. Because for the longest time I didn't watch because I heard a lot of people didn't like it. And then you made me watch it last year, and I loved it. I got the soundtrack after it ended. Like I still listen to it. Like I was at work today, and
it's funny. I'll hear songs from it, like the real songs. I'm like, I'd rather listen to the Rock of Ages version.
Exactly. And it was I think it was Pour Some Sugar on Me, and I was just picturing the Tom Cruise part of that film. And I had a blast watching that movie. That was definitely a movie that is it a great movie? No, but is it a fun movie? Yes, it is. Yeah. And then he did his Jack Reachers. I actually never saw any of his Jack Reacher films.
Oh, Jack Reacher is totally underrated. Well, it's gotten more respect lately. Jack Reacher had the problem of people comparing to the book where you're supposed to be this big hulking guy like Alan Richardson plays in the TV series.
Now, yeah.
But it really it not only was it a great tense kind of drama action thriller, It kind of played in that adult demographic where a lot of his movies do, actually the earlier Mission Impossibles, the Jack Reachers, things like that. They're those kind of movies like they come out like late summer and they kind of get a more adult audience. They aren't like the popcorn comic book type movies. And that was really good. And that was the first one, I think the first one directed by Christopher McQuarrie. He had written a couple before that, like Valkyrie, but this is where it started off his pairing up with Christopher McQuarrie. And it's a very slow burn movie. That's why it's not kind of a big blockbuster.
Yeah.
The sequel, not so great, but whatever.
Yeah, and then he did Oblivion, which I never saw because I just didn't hear good word of mouth. Not anything Tom. I think it was more the story. I heard it wasn't that great. But then we did talk about this on Weekend Crusaders, Edge of Tomorrow, or Live Direct, whatever the hell you want to call it. I call it Edge of Tomorrow. You call it.
Because that's the title. Edge of Tomorrow.
Exactly. That's the damn title. That movie blew us away.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. It's got great action. It's got a great cast behind it. And to me, I think outside of the Mission Impossibles, this was, I think, the movie that got everyone who was not a Mission Impossible fan to go, dude, Tom Cruise is back. It's like, no, Tom Cruise isn't back. Tom Cruise has always been here. You guys are just now starting to pay attention to him again. And Edge of Tomorrow was great. I cannot wait for the sequel to that. I hope the sequel's just as good.
If it happens.
Yeah, here's hoping. And then outside of the Mission Impossible, I think the only thing he's really done since Edge was The Mummy, which I'll have to watch that. I heard so many bad things about it. Like I said, not Tom. It was more the story because they were trying to set up the Universal Monsterverse kind of thing, which died.
Yeah, that well, it was like one of the one he did during that time was American Made, which actually is a decent movie. Right. It's just weird. It just doesn't feel like a Tom Cruise movie. It feels like a smaller role than you expect from Tom Cruise. But The Mummy, I think, it was one of those things where a studio saw how successful Marvel was and like, what do we own that we can make a combined universe for? And it's the same problem like Sony made with Spider-Man the first time they tried it, and DC has kind of made the same problems where they try and get ahead of themselves. Like they announced this whole connected universe of movies we're going to put out, and here's the first one, and it's like maybe you should have waited to see if the first one's successful before you tried to put the cart before the horse.
I don't think that it's not out of the realm of them being able to pull it off. I just think they were running before they could learn to walk with it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, because I actually am a Mummy defender of the Tom Cruise Mummy. Was he miscast for it? Yes. The role he's playing in that movie is clearly supposed to be a younger guy, and he doesn't quite seem right for it. He still does a fine job. Tom Cruise is going to be at least decent, at least good in anything he does. He was a little miscast, but I actually enjoy the movie quite a bit.
I think the main problem with it, and this is coming from someone who hasn't seen it, so I could be off base, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think it still tried to be too much like Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, and I think it needed to be more grounded in what the actual old school Mummy was, which is more of an actual horror film and less like an action-packed popcorn ride.
It tried to be Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, but a more serious version. It didn't have the camp, and that's what made Brendan Fraser's work was that humor to it.
Yeah.
And that campiness to it. And this one, like I said, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Most people didn't take to it, and I get it.
And like I said, I think if they kind of kept it more towards, like I said, the horror of it, like The Invisible Man did, which once again, Universal Monster, they could still do it, but they got to do it the right way. And if they did it with the tone that Invisible Man did and treated it like an actual horror film, then I think the universe could branch into eventually something like what they wanted to do with The Mummy, where they made it more popcorny. But you have to build everybody first, build the threats of these characters.
Yeah.
And The Mummy just was failing at that because, like I said, they tried to throw the Dr. Jekyll shit with Russell Crowe, which, like I said, that's not Tom's fault. That's the studio's fault.
Yeah.
But like I said, Mission Impossible has been kind of the staple point over the last. The first Mission Impossible was what, 94, 95?
The first one was 96.
96. And then like I said, I would say probably in the 2000s, once J.J. Abrams, took over, and then McQuarrie took over, Mission Impossible has now become a staple franchise. And we got, obviously, he's got 2 more at least coming out. Was it next
7's
year?
done filming. They're filming 8 now.
Yeah. So, I mean, we still got 2 more of those coming out. The last one, Fallout, was a lot of people's favorites. Like I said, that was the sixth one, sixth or seventh. That was six.
Sixth.
That was six in the franchise, and it's still going strong. It's still going great. They got great cast. Rebecca Ferguson, who we love, did great. Henry Cavill was a great villain in the last film, and Tom's still going out there doing shit that he shouldn't be doing at his age. I mean, that's the other thing too with Fallout.
I think that's why
was the broken foot situation.
I think that's why he's leaned so far into these sequels right now, because like he has American Made was 2017, so by the time we see Top Gun Maverick, it will have been 5 years since he did anything that wasn't a sequel. It's doing Mission Impossible movies. He did the Jack Reacher movie. He's got 2 more Mission Impossible movies coming out. He's got Top Gun coming out. I honestly think he's at the point now where he's like, okay, I'm starting to feel my age, so I'm going to pump out a few more big action films while I can, and then move on to the next phase of his career.
And we're probably going to start seeing him go back to
more dramatic roles, maybe some comedies.
Oscar-esque kind of performances, which I'm not against seeing that.
Not at all.
Him again. You know, he's put in his work. He's done all he needs to do to be on that like top echelon of actors. Now, a lot of people don't see him that way because he's not doing like what Denzel does, where Denzel's pumping out Oscar film, and then does an action film here or there. You know, and Denzel also didn't have the tabloids and stuff attacking him because Denzel's kind of been in his own. Same thing with like Leo or Tom Hanks, but Tom Cruise has like I said, he's done it all except for animated. But he's gone through every facet. You had the young Tom, you had the prestigious Tom, you had the action Tom, you had the rom comedy Tom, and we've had the franchise Tom. And now we are kind of, like I said, potentially maybe coming to the end of franchise Tom and moving on to maybe a new version of Tom, which is kind of more the older, prestigious Tom again. Like I said, there's so many films. We mentioned probably like at least 20 to 30 films already from him. Here's the biggest question, though. If someone, I don't know who in this world doesn't know who TC Legend is, but if someone was not a TC Legend fan, was like, oh, I never seen Tom Cruise or whatever, what are your 3 films that you would show someone? Say, this is Tom Cruise.
So it's a different question.
I'll say this. This is probably the hardest I've ever had to pick.
This is in any of our shows. This is the person. If ever somebody needed more than 3, it's this. It's because he's done such a variety of different kinds of roles and stuff. So like, well, I don't want to pick these 3, but then I'm not really showing this side of him and that kind of thing, you know. And these aren't necessarily my top 3 favorite films. I like all these films a lot. But if I had to pick 3 to choose somebody, I think gotta go Top Gun, the original, because that's the movie that made him a superstar. It's the movie that kind of shows him off. It's like the earlier career Tom Cruise. His personality, he's got, it's just the charisma he's shown in one of his early roles. Top Gun, I think, is his most iconic one. My second one, again, because I usually like to use these to kind of show different sides of him, would be Jerry Maguire. Because you get to see, yes, he's a star, but he's also doing rom-com. It's showing more, emotional kind of love story kind of thing. He's not just the action kind of guy. It's got some comedy to it. And I think that one is a good blend of a lot of different kind of genres and tones. And the last one, because I do want to show the serious actor side of him and show what he's capable of, I would include The Last Samurai.
We got 2 of the 3. I can't pick Top Gun because I don't love Top Gun. Nothing against Tom. I just am not a huge Top Gun fan. And if I want to introduce someone to Tom, I want something that's going to make a staple of Tom. And Jerry Maguire definitely is on that list because I want to show every facet of Tom. I want to show that he can do everything. With Jerry Maguire, you got the rom-com, you got comedy, you got the romantic. You're going to fall in love with Tom in that kind of film. Next for me is Minority Report because I want to say, hey, he can do sci-fi, he can do action, and he can do serious while still being fucking awesome. Plus, Minority Report is just so damn good of a movie. Yes, would I have loved to have done Collateral or the Mission Impossibles? Sure, but you can't just do one Mission Impossible movie. You got to do the whole damn thing. And we made that rule. We had to pick 3. We couldn't pick a whole franchise. And I wasn't going to pick just one Mission Impossible film. So for me, the last one has to be my favorite all-time performance, Last Samurai. It's gorgeous, beautifully acted by Tom. Ken Watanabe is fantastic in that film. Everything of that film is great. And I loved it too because remember last year I made you watch Movie Crusaders, and you're like, I forgot how good this movie was. It's like it's fantastic. It's a fantastic film. So for me, 2 of the 3, we hit the exact same thing on. But this is one of those, like you said, Tom, you need like 9 movies.
Yeah, if I had one more pick, if I had a 4th pick, I would actually go Rock of Ages. Just because
I probably would have gone either Collateral or A Few Good Men, which we barely even spoke about.
See, A Few Good Men is excellent to him, but I think that we've already kind of shown the dramatic side of him with last
Samurai. And that's what I think too. A Few Good Men, it's more of an ensemble.
Yeah.
Not just
well, that's what I wanted to go with Rock of Ages, because he would be, not only you get to see him just not being serious, there's no drama at all. It's just complete comedy, letting himself go. Yeah. But it is one of the few movies that he stars, because he doesn't do it very often, where he is not the star of the movie. He is a small supporting role in this movie, but he gets to have a ton of fun with it. Like you feel with
he's a small supporting part of the film, but he is like the big booming light of that film, because the film revolves around Stacey Jacks.
Yeah.
But he's not the main story. It's more or less him coming in sets off the whole rest of the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's a solid choice. To me, I'd probably pick Interview with a Vampire or Collateral, just because those performances are so iconic. But yes, if there was ever an actor that needed to break the 3-movie rule, Tom is that guy.
Yeah.
There's other actors like that too, where you're just like, oh my god, I can't narrow it down. But Tom Cruise is definitely one of those actors that this was probably one of the hardest to narrow down. More or less, like I had 2 locked in, and it was like that was so hard making that 3rd movie,
right?
Because I so badly wanted to do it. But going from iconic actor to iconic actress, we got Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts, it's one of those things where, and I'm going to say this, and this is not to come off as a knock with actresses, because that's not at all what I'm doing. There are some phenomenal actresses out there today. You got Saoirse Ronan, you got Emma Stone, you've got Michelle Williams, you've got Jennifer Lawrence. The list goes on and on and on. But has any of them, probably Meryl Streep, but has any of them ever? That's why I kind of pitched Julia Roberts to you. Has any of them ever hit Julia Roberts' level of stardom?
I don't think so. I mean, because you have the classic actresses, the Katharine Hepburns, the Audrey Hepburns, the older actresses, things like that. And then Meryl Streep obviously made her her mark, things like that. But as you get into kind of the modern era, Julia Roberts is kind of the biggest female star there was. I mean, there have been other ones who have kind of gotten to almost that point. The Sandra Bullocks, some people like that.
Meg Ryan, before she kind of just straight up stopped.
Right, but I think that Julia Roberts kind of achieve the superstar status, which is very, I think, hard to do nowadays. There are big stars nowadays. Like when you're talking about actors, there's not big actors. I think Dwayne Johnson is one of the biggest. Like he's definitely a star. He's an actor.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at it from a who sells tickets point of view, not all his movies are successful based on just him being in it. Mm-hmm. But with an actress, I don't think there's superstars out there, and I think it's hard for actors or actresses in the modern era to reach that status that some of these stars like the 80s and 90s did, just because there's so much content and so many more avenues for content that there's just that many more people working. So it's hard for one person to become the superstar.
Yeah, Julia Roberts, and this is coming from someone, like I said, who's younger. It was one of those things where Julia Roberts was a staple in my house, not because I was a big Julia Roberts fan. It was because my family was a Julia Roberts fan. And some of the movies that we always had on TV weren't necessarily her best, most iconic film roles, but it was movies that my family really loved. Honestly, when I was at a young age, Julia Roberts to me equaled tears, because my mom always had Steel Magnolias. Yeah, Steel Magnolias. Someone gave me crap for calling it Magnolias the other day. And I was like, no, it's Steel Magnolias. And they're like, Steel Magnolias. I go, no, it's Steel Magnolias. but yeah, it's like I always constituted her and Sally Field as tears, because they always had it on and my mom always cried watching that movie. But yeah, Julia Roberts, she's this iconic staple point that we were discussing. It was like, we could talk about, the present day, actresses, but it's like, let's talk about who we miss. And yes, she still will do the occasional film here and there, but we miss Julia Roberts. We haven't really had, I'm trying to think, what was the last iconic Julia Roberts role?
the last iconic Julia Roberts role.
Was it
You're
Pray
going
Love?
back to.
Was it Eat, Pray, Love, or are we want to even go back further than that?
You're going back to Brockovich.
I don't know. America's Sweethearts and the Ocean series. I feel like she was still a big
Oceans is
name
just kind of
then.
her as part of an ensemble, and the Sweethearts, I never thought she was that big a deal, but I don't know. But the point is, though, now I mean, she does. Well, here's the thing about Julia Roberts, and I'll say this is, I think she's honestly, and a lot of actresses nowadays kind of follow her template. Is like she started out her career doing small films, like they all do. She had
Yeah.
this huge breakout role in Pretty Woman when she became like the it girl. You know, she was the one cast, and she's embraced that to some extent. Just some romantic comedies, a lot of those things here and there. But then she makes that transition, starts doing a lot of dramas because she wants to show her serious side. Does more and more dramas, and that's where she goes. And then now I know she started family things like that, so I think that's part of the reason she's worked less and less. Part of it's also the reality of Hollywood, for better or worse. Well, there's no better about it. But yes, older actresses have a harder time finding good roles. Although that's been improving in recent years. But so she's in a lot of ensembles, she's in a lot of small films, but a lot of times she's just not doing that much work. And while I've never been the biggest Julia Roberts fan, I've enjoyed many of her movies, but I was never like, oh, Julia Roberts, my favorite actress. Just kind of when I see her, pop up somewhere, I'm like, you know what? I do kind of miss seeing her and stuff.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's like Tom Hanks is America's dad.
Mm-hmm.
He's America's father in a sense because we grew up with him kind of being this role for us. Julia Roberts would have probably been America's mom, but then she kind of just went away and disappeared in a way. She's the mom that abandoned us. Nah, but it's one of these like, yeah, I mean, Pretty Woman, is when she kind of became her iconic role and got pushed into the limelight. And so for me, like, yes, like I said, the first time I knew her, it was Steel Magnolias because my mom cried whenever that movie was on. But that wasn't me going Julia Roberts. I was just like, oh, that's the crying movie, and oh, there's Julia Roberts. But like that was too young for me to know who she was. And probably for me, I was probably too young to see Pretty Woman when it came out because it was about a hooker, so I didn't watch it right away. So for me, Hook was probably when I first recognized her because of my age. Hook with her as Tinkerbell was probably the first time I took notice of her. And then what's shockingly is it wasn't Pretty Woman that I like started taking notice of her. It was actually Sleeping with the Enemy, which was right after Pretty Woman. Because for some reason I wasn't allowed to watch Pretty Woman, but I was allowed to watch Sleeping with the Enemy. I don't know why. So it was kind of like the two movies after Pretty Woman that I took notice and paid attention to her. And like I said, still at a young age, I still wasn't like, grabbing onto actors and actresses then, but those are the ones that I probably were like, yeah, my brain, those are probably the first two ones. Honestly, probably the first movie that I like legitimately like, oh, Julia Roberts. And this is because like it's not a talked about film first, but in my household, this was a movie that was always on because my parents, especially my mom, loved this movie. And it was something to talk about. My mom had that movie on all the damn time. Granted, I think it was probably more for Kara Sedgwick's character because she was hilarious in that film. But that movie was always on. And then it led to probably one of the movies that, granted, now I don't hate it, but as a kid, I hated it because they played the same damn scene over and over and over and over again. And that is My Best Friend's Wedding. They played that damn song number on a loop in my house, and I hated that movie. And it's not anything against Julia Roberts, but I hated that movie so much. Now I can watch it and I'm totally fine with it. But I hated that fucking film when I was a kid. I hate that movie. Like, I'm sure you laugh probably because like you know exactly what I'm talking about, that stupid scene.
Well, I do. Well, so let me back up a little bit. My first exposure to her was I had seen some of her earlier movies. I had seen Satisfaction, which is funny because it's a Justine Bateman. It's the star of this movie, Jason Bateman's brother. You know her from Family Ties, probably. But it's funny because like in the years since then, they released it on VHS. A different title called Girls of Summer, starring Julia Roberts, and it's like she's very much a supporting role in this movie. They do that a lot of times, but I've seen her in that. I've seen her in Mystic Pizzas. I don't know if I had seen Steel Magnolias or not, but Pretty Woman is definitely the first one where I took notice of her. It's kind of breakout star for me, and then once she did that, it was kind of just a shooting star from there because I had Flatliners, Sleeping with the Enemy. I think Hook is probably about the time when she kind of started to obtain that superstar status.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that. One of my earlier ones I really like, things underrated, is the Pelican Brief.
I actually have never seen it.
It gets lumped in with all the other John Grisham movies, which
Yeah.
all the John Grisham movies are kind of the same in many ways, but her and Denzel together, that's a great pair of actors to put in a movie together. And it was actually very good. And then what you were talking about, My Best Friend's Wedding. My Best Friend's Wedding is actually a very funny movie. It might be one of my 3 favorites from her, but that scene, it's like, okay, I get it. And it was funny when I saw it in the theater. It was probably funny when I watched a couple more times. But then it's just like, okay, you're sick of it. And I think I worked in a video store at the time it came out, so of course it got played all the time. And you're just like, okay, this isn't funny anymore. And it's one of those things, it's not the movie's fault. It's just, okay, I'm sick of it now. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not the movie's fault. It's one scene in a movie. The problem is that everyone felt like they had to replay that scene over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
I still don't get the appeal of that scene. I really don't. But yeah, it was like I said, she did other movies in between, like Hook and My Best. I mean, she did I Love Trouble, Mary Riley. I never saw that one.
I never saw that one. No.
Michael Collins. And then she kind of got, like I said, she kind of hit this thing. Like, she didn't really do a whole lot of action, but when she did, she was solid. I mean, Conspiracy Theory, I thought was pretty decent at the time. But her bread and butter was doing like dramedies, like drama with some comedy, maybe the occasional rom-com. You have like, Stepmom. My mom loved that movie. Notting Hill, Runaway Bride, which reconnected her with Richard Gere from Pretty Woman. But then we get her to her Oscar film, which was Erin Brockovich, which everyone talked about Erin Brockovich, whether it was her push-up bra or her performance or everything. That was probably the first time I think everyone was like, man, everyone really, really, really is talking about Julia Roberts here.
And honestly, I didn't like her character at all, but she was definitely a powerhouse of an acting performance.
I didn't. It was like, it's okay, it's fine. But once you like you said, after Erin Brockovich, I don't think we necessarily got to see her less. It's just, it was, for some reason, it was like she got her Oscar. And yeah.
I was just looking while you were talking earlier, and in the 2010s, she made like 10 movies.
It's just good movies.
I just realized it's not the kind of movies that I really felt like seeing. It was like the August Osage County, Secret in Their Eyes, Normal Heart, Mirror Mirror, Mother's Day, Ben is Back. And she's probably wonderful in these movies. It's just, these are not the kind of movies that I'm going to rush out and see.
Exactly. Like, I'm looking after Erin Brockovich.
I will say the very next one is, I think, her most underrated movie, The Mexican, with Brad Pitt, directed by Gore Verbinski, who did the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, the first 3. I really enjoy The Mexican.
And I've never seen The Mexican. Like I said, after Brockovich, I have only seen 4 of these movies. The Two Oceans, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, we watched it last year for Movie Crusaders, and then Closer. Other than that, I have not watched any.
I would highly recommend watching The Mexican, because it's got, it's kind of a rom-com, but it's also action. It's also a lot of comedy too. It's Brad Pitt in my favorite Brad Pitt mode, where he's just clearly having fun. It's this character in The Mexican is like the equivalent of that scene in the Bullet Train trailer. Like, dude, I don't even know you. That's like Brad Pitt in this whole movie.
And that's when he's like, not that Brad Pitt's still not heartthrob, but that's like heartthrob Brad Pitt time.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he's So I mean, that's probably a movie that I would probably check out at some point, kind of thing. But yeah, it's just I mean, like I said, like we talk about how she hasn't been around, but she has been around, but she just hasn't been doing the movies that you and I.
She just is no longer seeking out those superstar roles.
Exactly, that's the thing. She's not out in the
phase that I think
limelight.
we're talking about Tom Cruise going to, where she's like, you know what, I'm just going to make some good films, maybe get some award nominations, we'll see. But she's not trying to make the money anymore. She's not trying to make the blockbusters because she doesn't need to.
Yeah, because it's like, I remember when I saw the trailer for Secret in Their Eyes, I was like, oh, Julia Roberts is back. It's like, she hasn't really gone anywhere. She just hasn't really been in my line of vision. I never did see the film because I heard it wasn't all that great.
It was okay.
Yeah, I'll eventually check it out. It's on my list of things to watch. But then, yeah, she just, in my opinion, she disappeared. She's clearly still making movies, but like you said, she's not making those Hollywood like spotlight on Julia Roberts roles. And maybe it's because she doesn't want to play kind of like the older kind of characters, maybe because she's Julia Roberts. I still think that she could put out some bangers if she really wanted to. You get her the right kind of actor, director with a good solid cast. Julia Roberts is still capable of going out there and putting on a star level performance, but I just feel like she's kind of taken that kind of back seat. And
wasn't her very next movie coming out? I believe it's the end of this year. It's called Ticket to Paradise. It's I think it's like a comedy. I think I'm sure it's more of a dramedy, but it's her and George Clooney are a couple, and it's got Caitlin Dever in it and Billy Lord and a bunch of other people. So I'm looking forward to that one.
That cast is a pretty solid cast. Plus, that's another guy, George Clooney, that we don't really see much anymore. That's more because he's directing and he's kind of more about his family now too, kind of like Julia Roberts. Plus, you're bringing back the oceans of it all. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying, like of the Julia Roberts movies, there's not a whole lot of them that I probably have sat down and watched. But the ones that I did watch, I love her in them. But a lot of her movies aren't necessarily in my area of that I like to watch. But we still talk about her. We still recognize her because she is that iconic movie star actress. I think she's due, kind of like for Tom Cruise, she's due for a resurgence. I think Julia Roberts is due to come out, and maybe this one coming out, what you said is What in Paradise?
Ticket to Paradise.
Ticket to Paradise. Maybe this will be that film where she comes out and everyone's like, Julia Roberts is back, and blah, 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 and stuff like that. Who knows? Maybe, or it'll be one of those George Clooney movies that he's made where it's like, oh yeah, that was good, but no one's really going to talk about it. Kind of thing, like The Descendants. Everyone talked about Descendants for like award season, but then no one ever really talked about it.
That was it. Yeah, no, we talked about the movie.
I was like, I feel like I haven't heard George Clooney's name in forever because he'll make like outside of like what was it, Gravity. I feel like I haven't heard George Clooney in forever. But it's with Julia Roberts, it's one of those things where in the 90s and early 2000s, she was the movie actress. She was a movie star, bona fide, like Tom Cruise. She was the actress out there. And then, like I said, she just kind of not necessarily disappeared, but just stopped doing the movies that put her out in the forefront. And all these other actresses were starting to come in, like Sandra Bullock and others, where they were kind of taking those roles. Not necessarily from her, but just kind of they were the focus point. Julia Roberts just kind of.
Well, again, that was the smart thing with her is I think that she very easily after Pretty Woman could have been just rom-com girl, but she didn't. I think she still did plenty of rom-coms. My Best Friend's Wedding and Runaway Bride and all these other ones. Yeah. But I think she was smart in that she branched out so she didn't get typecast. And like you said, these other actors kind of came and filled that void and became more of the rom-com thing. And she was able to just do what she wanted to do.
So for me, if I was going to pick 3 movies for Julia Roberts, like you said, you and I, we're not, her movies are not necessarily our cup of tea, but we can at least appreciate the movies that we do like from her. Obviously Pretty Woman has to be on that list because Pretty Woman is, for most people, one of the best rom-coms of all time. It was literally her star-making role, and for the most part, it's a solid film overall. So Pretty Woman definitely be one of mine. My Best Friend's Wedding would be number 2 for me. Like I said, I don't particularly love it back when I was a kid, but now watching, I was like, this is actually a really, really good rom-com. You got a young Cameron Diaz, you got fantastic cast around her outside of the one scene. So that one is a staple point for Julia Roberts as well. And then my third one, I would love to go Hook or Sleeping with the Enemy, but it's kind of hard to say no to Erin Brockovich because it did win her the Oscar. Like I said, not necessarily 3 movies that I love, but if I'm trying to introduce someone to Julia Roberts, for me, those are the 3 movies you have to kind of show somebody to kind of say, this is who Julia Roberts is. What were your 3?
Matched on 2 or 3 again. Okay. Pretty Woman, like you said, star-making performance, and not just that it was her first big starring role, but she really broke out, and she kind of you took notice of her. So that's definitely one of them. Erin Brockovich as well. Again, not one of my favorite movies of hers. It's fine, but she clearly did a great job acting. Got Oscar out of it, and it's considered one of her best dramatic roles. For the third one, I was trying to figure out what areas we weren't kind of showing of her, and I considered. I thought something that's a little popcorny, a little dramatic, a little bit of both. I actually went with the Pelican Brief. It's kind of along the same lines as Sleeping with the Enemy, where it's got that. It's a drama, it's a thriller. So you get to see both kind of the popular side and the more prestigious side, a little bit kind of mixed.
Gotcha. Like I said, we hope we see her come up again. Like I said, hopefully this film coming out later in the year brings back Julia Roberts and we can start talking about her relevantly again. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Now we're gonna go to the man, the guy that is beloved by mostly everybody in Hollywood, and then you got the trolls that hate on him. We're talking about Quentin Tarantino, Mr. Q-Tip, Mr. QT. Everyone is awaiting his 10th and final film. Yes,
yeah, right.
Huge quotes on that. You put enough fucking money in front of him. Quentin Tarantino's got to keep making films until he dies. But Quentin Tarantino, I am more of a fan of later Tarantino than earlier Tarantino. Now that's because, like I said, younger me didn't watch those movies when I was a kid. So I am more towards the later end. Are you more kind of mixed, or are you more towards the earlier Tarantino-esque time?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's kind of that mid Tarantino is the part that I was not a fan of. The very early Tarantino.
What's funny is like the mid is what I love.
Because it's like, for me, I mean, I first of all, I honestly, Reservoir Dogs came out. Obviously, I really enjoyed the movie. It's good. It had a lot of buzz on it because it's one of those movies nobody had ever heard of. It just kind of became this growing cult thing.
Yeah.
And this early Tarantino, that's up here when I was working in a video store. So I was hearing it from everybody. Because that's all we did is talk movies, and the customers came in, we just talked movies all day. And so this is the kind of thing got talked about. And then, of course, he wrote Pulp Fiction. He wrote Natural Born Killers, which I'm not a fan of that one. I mean, I'm sorry, that's Pulp Fiction. I meant True Romance. He wrote True Romance, which is one of my favorite. Actually, if I counted that as a Quentin Tarantino film, it might be my number one. But then
if we counted True Romance would be one of my three. But yeah. It's not a Tarantino
film. But it's not. So. He just wrote it.
I love that early in the year we did Tony Scott. We're like, we can't do Pink True Romance because it's not really Tony Scott's film, it's Tarantino's film. And now it's time for Tarantino. We're like, True Romance is not his film.
Right.
I thought that True Romance is getting screwed out of both picks.
So when Pulp Fiction came out, and that I talked earlier, that was another one of these pop culture moments where it was this big breakthrough. It was a whole different kind of style of filmmaking. Yes, it kind of modeled itself after some, older films that Tarantino liked, but Pulp Fiction was kind of its own genre. It created an endless stream of knockoffs that came out in the wake of Pulp Fiction. It had this great ensemble cast. It had the writing was just so quotable. I mean, everyone still quotes almost every line of that movie to this day. So that was kind of a big thing. So that's my favorite of his. Kind of fell into this in between there. And I like all of Quentin Tarantino's movies to different extents. The Death Proof is really pushing that. But the middle phase of it, I'm not a fan of the Kill Bills. Jackie Brown, I thought there was some good parts to it, but it was a little bit disappointing follow-up to Pulp Fiction. But then the later years, when you got into like the Django Unchained and the Hateful Eight and things like that, I really am enjoying some of his more modern stuff.
Yeah, so for you, Tarantino, you took notice of him right away, which was Reservoir Dogs.
You kind of, like any debuting director, I think you took notice of that one, like, hey, this is a good movie. I've never heard of this guy. But it was really Pulp Fiction where you like really took notice of this guy. Like, wow, this guy's gonna be big.
Gotcha. See, for me, like I said, because I was younger, Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, I didn't watch those till probably the last 10 years. I didn't watch those in the 90s because I wasn't a huge. I mean, I watched movies, but I was a kid. Like, I'm not like 10 years old watching Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. Like, right. You have to be a teenager, or at least like.
I was the perfect age for it. I was like 22 years old, 23 years old, and Pulp Fiction came out. So I was like, right, that annoying age where people get related to Pulp Fiction or Tarantino, and they become that cult of Tarantino. I was that age when Pulp Fiction came out. So
yeah, so I didn't watch those until I was in my 20s. So I can't really say that those were what got me. Honestly, I knew Quentin Tarantino as the actor. I knew him from Desperado and from Dusk Till Dawn. I didn't know him as the director. Really? I knew him as the actor, Quentin Tarantino. So when everyone was like, dude, he's a phenomenal director, I was like, I've never seen Reservoir Dogs. I've never seen Pulp Fiction. I've never seen Jackie Brown. I still have never seen Jackie Brown. I was going to try to watch it before the show, but I ended up just running out of time. So for me, I knew him as the actor, Quentin Tarantino, which is weird because no one sees him as an actor, but that's how I knew him. I knew him as the guy who came into the bar during Desperado trying to tell the story, who got blown away, and then the brother to George Clooney and from Dusk Till Dawn. That was my Quentin Tarantino. In terms of directing, I first noticed him was Kill Bill. because once, like you said, that was my age. I was working at the movie theaters. Naturally, my focus was on everything movies. Kill Bill Volume 1 came out. Everyone was losing their mind about Quentin Tarantino, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, this movie just looks cool to me. I wasn't paying attention to the Tarantino aspect of it. And then I watched them, and I was like, oh, I think I get it now. I think I know why everyone's all crazy about Tarantino. And that's when I became a Tarantino fan. And then for me also, one of my favorite Tarantino directed scenes is in one of my favorite comic book movies of all time, Sin City, which is the scene in the car with Benicio del Toro and Clive Owen, which, you know, that one scene was directed by Tarantino, and I love that scene. You could tell that's a Tarantino scene just because of the scene itself. Like I said, Death Proof, I more like the movie's fine. I loved how it ended. I thought how it ended was just kind of like brilliant.
It's got Mary Elizabeth Winstead. So
it's got Mary Elizabeth Winstead. God, she's in a cheerleading outfit like the whole damn time, right? For me, my like obviously I knew him from Kill Bill. I unlike you, I actually really enjoy the Kill Bills. Granted, Volume 1 is better than Volume 2. I treat them as one movie because you can't do one without the other. They are a whole film. He made it as a one film. So for me, I don't do volumes for that. That is a one movie for me. Inglourious Bastards is hands down one of my favorite films of all time. And that's one of those movies where I could tell within the first 20 minutes of that movie, because that first 20 minutes is one of the best 20 minutes of a film in movie history for me. That movie is one of those, it's like, I love movies. I do. But that first 20 minutes of Inglourious Bastards to me was like eye-opening for me. I was understanding like direction, lighting, the acting, the dialogue, everything about that first 20 minutes with Christoph Waltz, and I'm blanking on the other actor's name. That movie is what made me fall in love with Quentin Tarantino. Like I said, I love the Kill Bills, and at that time I had seen Reservoir Dogs and I had seen Pulp Fiction, and I think it's with those two movies, it was built up so fucking much in my head that when I finally watched them, I was like, they're okay. I don't love them. They're solid, but I don't see why everyone lost their damn minds over it. But Inglourious Bastards to me is a very, 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 very special place in my heart. Like I said, Christoph Waltz, hands down, one of the best performances I've ever seen in a film. I love the Bastards. I love that the whole trailer, talking about movie marketing, they built that whole trailer around the Bastards, who are barely in the damn movie.
Yeah, they built that out to be a whole. That's why. Here's the weird thing about Quentin Tarantino, especially in that mid-range I'm talking about, is that, and even into his later career, I guess, as well, is that a lot of his movies, I first see them, I'm like really not impressed by them. I'm like, okay, it was good, had some good acting, some things like that, but it's, too long, too slow, too convoluted, things like that. And it didn't help when they completely mismarket a movie like that. Like, this is Brad Pitt and these guys are going on this revenge rampage. And then it turns out, no, you're getting a movie that's 80% subtitled. Brad Pitt's got about 20 minutes of screen time in this thing, and so it sets you up for different expectations than what you got. Is now the weird thing though, I was saying Quentin Tarantino's, I went in these movies, I come out of them a little disappointed or whatever, but most of them, not all of them, then continue to grow on me. When I first saw Django Unchained, I thought, I was like, it's all right, but I don't understand people raving about it. Same thing with Hateful Eight. I'm just like, it's all right. But now those are two of my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies. And so, and even to a lesser extent, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Inglourious Bastards, which I came out of those not terribly impressed by them. But as I rewatched them, I do enjoy them a lot more. I think both of them are better as individual scenes and segments and performances. Like you talk about the opening scene of Inglourious Bastards. I think as a whole movie, it's not as strong as the individual parts of it. But I have, even those, to a lesser extent, I've learned to love them more over time.
Yeah, see, I like I said, once Bastards came out, I was like, I was a total Tarantino, like, oh my god. Django Unchained came out. I love Django. I do. I think Django's a fantastic film. I, surprisingly though, didn't necessarily really love the ending of Django. I felt it went a rather too long. I felt like when it should have inevitably ended, it stopped, and then it went another like 20 plus minutes after that. And I felt like, okay, we got a little too much of this. But I love that film. I love the performances. Leo, Waltz again, Jamie Foxx, everyone in that film was great. Hateful Eight, I still haven't turned the corner on that. I remember, and granted, it's probably my fault, but I saw Hateful Eight and The Revenant back to back. Those are two really long fucking movies.
They really are,
and I saw The Revenant first.
They're both long. So, they're both slow.
Yes.
But
so I remember I saw Revenant. I saw Revenant first, and I was like, all right, cool, Hateful Eight, here we go. This is gonna wake me up. And I was like,
oh, you mean the same day?
Yes, like I said, back to back. I saw them back to back. So I was like excited for Hateful Eight because like Revenant is a serious film. Leo's winning the Oscar, all that kind of it was a very, very slow plotting film. And then I went right into Hateful Eight. I'm like, all right, it's Tarantino. He's gonna get me going. And it's not that movie.
No, this is Tarantino's. This is Tarantino's signature dialogue.
Yeah,
but the whole movie. The movie is essentially a play. Yeah, I could totally see this being performed on stage. He did before the movie came out when they had canceled the movie at one point because the script got out and he said, I'm not making it. They did a stage reading where the actors just sat in chairs and read the parts. They performed it as just a spoken word play. And that's because this movie was all about the dialogue. So yeah, I can see after already sitting in the movie theater for 3 hours watching Leo tromp through the sno that watching other people sit around in the snow for another 3 hours.
And I honestly have not watched Hateful Eight since. It's not. It didn't. Like it's one of those like. It's kind of like with The Irishman and like even Revenant. It's like you're watching. Like I know I'm watching technically a good movie, but I just don't care.
I honestly think I'm not. I don't know if you'd want to or not, but I honestly think you would enjoy it more if you watched it. Not just because you aren't just coming off of Revenant, but in the time since then. Walton Goggin has become is one of our favorite kind of character actors. Channing Tatum, we've started to feel a lot more better about in the years since then. So I think a lot of these people have kind of
that. And didn't Netflix like it's like the longer cut of it, but then they break it up into like 4 1-hour episodes.
They broke it up. And honestly, it's not that much longer. It looks like a longer running time than it is because they add beginning and end credits to every episode. But it's still probably good.
I think I tried to watch it. And I think I watched like the first episode, and then I was already like, all right, I'm still just really not like. I was like, oh, I'll watch it like this. I guarantee, like, I'll like it this time. And I think I got through the first episode of it. I was like, I'm still just not feeling this. I'm not getting it, and I never went back and watched the remaining 3. And
I get it.
I do owe it to Tarantino to go back and finally watch. It's just like Jackie Brown. I owe it to Tarantino to at least check out Jackie Brown. But yeah, Hateful Eight has always just been that one movie. It's like I can't get into it.
Well, Tarantino is one of those actors who I think everybody has like different favorites. It's weird how people have their different ones that they cling to and the different ones they don't like as much. Now, most of us at least respect the ones that we don't like as much. We just aren't our favorites. And so I totally get if like, you like Kill Bill. I'm not a big fan of Kill Bill. I like Hateful Eight. You're not as big a fan of Hateful Eight. But that's just the thing is even though every Quentin Tarantino is totally identifiable as a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Oh, totally.
They all hit people differently.
And like with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think
some people love. It's one of my least favorites of his. Not that it's a bad movie.
And and just like what you said with Bastards, I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has great scenes in it, but the movie as a whole does not work for me. I don't think the wow, blanking on the character. She's a real life person too. Margot Robbie's character.
Yeah, I blanked on her name too.
Wow. Jeez.
I'm looking it up right now. I don't know why I'm blanking out on it. It is Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate, thank you.
Cut out that whole storyline.
Yeah, that whole storyline of Sharon Tate.
Which ironically is what the entire trailer has made you think.
Exactly. It's all building towards the Sharon Tate and the Marilyn Manson, Jesus. The Manson family. It's all building towards that. And to me, that was the worst aspect of the film. Like them literally stopping the movie so she could go to the movies to watch herself and us having to watch her watch herself. I'm like, I remember in the theater going, oh my God, this is so unnecessary. This is unneeded. Like, this is seriously, like, I get what Tarantino's doing. Tarantino's trying to show respect to Sharon Tate, showing that she's more than just what happened to her. She was an actual actress. And I was like, I respect what he was doing, but that's what the uncut versions are for. Putting that in the film, which I know he's saying, well, not everyone watched the uncut versions. I get what Tarantino was doing. I respect what he did. But it stops the movie at a halt. and to me kind of made me like turn against it. Plus, then doing that, like you say, he loves to mess with history. I thought it was kind of funny what happened at the end of the movie with the whole like change in the whole Manson family storyline.
Which I think that's what they were trying to do with those earlier seasons of Sharon Tate, was like they're trying to build you up thinking that it's building.
It was going to go that route.
When it doesn't, and I, in that case, I understand why he did what he did, but you're right, it did just bring this.
But then it's a whole mystery, because it's like, then why did we waste all this time? It was like, we wasted all this time because you if you know the story of Sharon Tate, then this is for the people who know the story of it, and you're going to it. But then it's people who don't know it, which, you know, I would say not a lot of people don't, but then, you know, who knows what people actually pay attention to in terms of stories. Then yeah, it's an unnecessary filled story. I went to that movie wanting to see Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio's story, because them two together is fantastic. I loved watching those two play off each other. But once again, just like the Bastards, there's so many other story elements going on that you just miss the time you got with them, going, man, we could have had so much more with those guys. Plus the certain elements that, you know, really were kind of left unsaid and stuff like that. And like, it was an uneven film for me. Like I said, there are great moments through Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that I would love to just go back and rewatch. Hell, probably my favorite well-acted performance of that whole film was Leo with the young girl. Like that whole thing with her. Some of the best acted performances of the year in that one moment. Plus, I also loved Leo's little dance. That like little gif of his dance was like, I rewatched that way too many times than I want to admit. Tarantino, like we said with M. Night Shyamalan's a phenomenal trailer maker. He knows how to sell his movies. Tarantino is a phenomenal scene maker. He can take these scenes, whether it's the Crazy 88's fight scene in Kill Bill, whether it's the Pulp Fiction conversations in the car going to the apartment in the beginning of the movie, to Inglourious Basterds' first 20 minutes, or there's so many iconic scenes. And if that'd be one thing that you and I should probably do at one point, that'd be really cool, is if we did like a countdown or a ranking list of not necessarily Tarantino's favorite movies, but Tarantino's best scenes. That would actually be a really fun episode to do. We might actually do that now that I think, because I'm actually getting excited thinking about that in my head. He's phenomenal at doing that stuff. And whatever he decides to do for his 10th and final film, which everyone's like, do Star Trek. It's like, do you really want him to finish with Star Trek? Like, come on, people. Brian likes Star Trek. I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, but do you really want Tarantino to do Star Trek? I don't want Tarantino to do Star Trek.
I never wanted Tarantino anywhere near Star Trek. I don't want him anywhere near anyone else's properties. Just make.
If you want him to do a sci-fi film, let him fucking do a sci-fi film. Do not let him do.
Oh, I'm all for that. Yeah.
I do not let him touch a Star Trek film. Oh god, what I love, and we've said this many times before, and you kind of said this, like Tarantino, every film you can see the DNA of Tarantino. You can see the heart of Tarantino through his films, through his dialogue, the way he shoots. Yes, his foot fetish. You can see every film you watch. You can live and breathe the Tarantino of it all. And now you're starting to see other directors do an homage to that. Drew Goddard in Bad Times at El Royale has very, very Tarantino-esque. One of our favorite movies of last year, oh my god.
Which one are you going for? I'm not sure.
The Western.
Oh, Harder They Fall.
Yes, I wanted to go like the hate you give. Like, that is so not that movie. The Harder They Fall. So Tarantino. And I loved that. Like, it was an homage. It wasn't a guy trying to rip off Tarantino, but there were so many times you watch him like, this feels like a Tarantino film in the best way. Not in like this guy's trying to rip it off. And you're starting to see these other directors that are fans of Tarantino showing respect by doing Tarantino-esque kind of stuff. And then
much of the way Tarantino has modeled after the directors that he loved in his youth.
Exactly. Like he wanted to do his crime movies. He wanted to do his samurai and his westerns and his homage to Hollywood. Like, Tarantino is the same way. So he doesn't get, unlike a lot of directors who are really egotistical, they're like, they're ripping me off. Like, no, he's like, cool. I'm glad that they find things that they love about me and do those certain things. And that's the thing with Tarantino, is a lot of people kind of put him in frame as like he's just this huge asshole. But Tarantino he's a fan.
Well, he's one of those guys who, I will admit, your conversation with him, he's clearly up his own ass.
But so is most directors.
Many of his fans are way up there too,
yes,
to the obnoxious levels.
We know
But
a lot of them.
if you look at the work itself,
Exactly. It's like, do I like you said, do you love all the Tarantino movies? No, not at all. Do you respect the work that he's done with them all? Absolutely. There are good ones, there are bad ones, and then there are like the in between. But you can't deny that he's one of the best directors today. He's one of the best directors of all time in a way. And because he's been very, very selective with his movies, is what also has made him so iconic, because he's not out there doing 20, 30 plus films like Spielberg.
It's a big deal when you get a Quentin Tarantino film.
Exactly. He has made his films a staple point, to the point where, like Cameron has now with like the Avatar stuff, when you see Tarantino, everyone immediately just whoosh, eyes on screen, rush to the films, rush to the theaters, because Tarantino has built this cult empire. It's not even a cult anymore. It was a cult back in the day. Now he's just in the stratosphere. He's built this iconic name for himself that when he does inevitably make his final 10th film, it's going to also, once again, it's going to have expectations through the roof if it's supposed to be his final film. But I feel like it's such an enormous amount of pressure he's putting on himself now by saying it's going to be his last movie, that whatever he ends up doing, I feel like he's taking so long now because he doesn't know what he wants to do for his final film. I mean, a lot of people want a third Kill Bill. I want a third Kill Bill. I don't want it necessarily to be his last movie though, but I want to see, because he said after the Kill Bill, he's like, I want to do one when Black Mamba's daughter is grown and have her go after Beatrix. I want to see that film. I don't want to necessarily be his last movie, but I want to see that. A lot of people want to see a Star Trek Tarantino. I don't want to see that, but if he wants to do a sci-fi film, I want to see that. But by putting that stable point of it's his last film,
I think even he's kind of like, well, he's just, trying to figure out what he wants his last film to be. But I also think that he's totally making a loophole. I think that in doing something like he did with Hateful Eight and breaking it into chapters and putting it on Netflix, I think that he likes to have this outlet of long form storytelling. And even if he only makes one more movie, I bet he'll make more things like that, which are more like a mini series.
If he does something along the lines of what Mike Flanagan does with the Haunting franchise,
something like that, yes,
Tarantino would that'd be amazing. He's not being stuck to a studio, and he's not being stuck to a 2.5 hour time frame. He's like, hey, I have this story. I want it to be 10 hours long. Cool. One
and he knows somebody like Netflix will just throw piles of money at him. Just ask Ryan Johnson.
HBO Max, Amazon, Netflix, all of them will be like, whoosh, here's all the money in the world. And they'll do it, and we will come and see whatever he has to do. So I think we pretty much touched on everything he's done. So for you, what would be your 3 films that you would tell someone to watch?
The one primary one for me would be Pulp Fiction. I still think it's his best movie, from my opinion. I think that it just shows how he handles the ensemble cast, how he handles the interweaving stories. Like I said, there are other movies where he did these interweaving stories but didn't blend so well, such as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I think Pulp Fiction, is definitely one I'd show. The second one I would show Hateful Eight. Again, this is because actually it's essentially a play. It's nothing but dialogue. It's like, this is what he can do with basically people sitting in a room talking for 2 hours. I think that it just really shows off his writing skill, not only in dialogue, which is great, but also just with storytelling. And the third one, while not one of my favorites, it would be Inglourious Basterds. Because while I think that it doesn't gel together as a whole as well as some of his other movies, I think that it has some of his best scenes in it.
You kind of broke up there. I heard best scenes and that was it.
Oh, no, that's all I said.
Oh, that was it? Okay. I just got there was like you froze for a second. I was like, if he's still talking, I don't hear him.
No.
Internet, everybody, it's great. Yeah, so for me, I mean, obviously Inglourious Basterds, 100% on my list. Like I said, it's one of my favorite films of all time. Like I said, it, to me, was revolutionary for me, that film was. Obviously, like I said, not Brian's favorite, but I would do Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair, because that's what the whole film itself is called. No, I'm not going to say Volume 1 or Volume 2. No, it's one fucking film. Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair is what I would pick, because, like I said, you're getting that samurai Western aspect of the film. The first one is more straight up samurai, where the other one's kind of more that kind of Westerny kind of film. Like I said, the performances are all solid. The action is exciting, bloody, gory, and straight up just fun to watch. Whereas with Inglourious Basterds, it's more serious, fun still, but just iconic performances with Bastards. As much as I would love to pick Django, I'd love to. I think there would be no Tarantino without Pulp Fiction. And like granted, Reservoir Dogs came first, but I think Reservoir Dogs got his foot in the door, and I think Pulp Fiction is what made him Tarantino.
Yeah, so, Pulp Fiction wasn't what it was. He would have been making small movies like Reservoir Dogs, which are great.
He probably would be making like 15, 20 movies by now.
Yeah, small cult films, but never. And without Pulp Fiction, I don't think he would have pulled in the kind of stars he got in his subsequent movies, because that's the one that made all the big stars be like, we want to work with this guy.
Exactly. And granted, I am not the biggest fan of Pulp Fiction. I know it's a good film. I don't think it's as great as everyone makes it out to be, but you can't deny what this film did for his career and everyone else that was attached to it. You had actors in it like Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta, Uma Thurman, the list goes on and on and on. It doesn't matter how small their roles are or how big their roles are, everyone plays an important role, and it's one of those, all these puzzle pieces that just all kind of come together to make this amazing film. While it's not necessarily my cup of tea, I can see with the greatness in that film. And so if I was going to show someone who Quentin Tarantino was, it would be pretty much a crime to not show them Pulp Fiction. So it has to be my third film, whereas the other ones are more fun and serious. Pulp Fiction you got to have in there. So those would be my three. Anything you want to add for Tarantino before we call this a night?
No, I think we covered. I do just want to say that like we talked about True Romance, it's like he's also done some writing in films he didn't do. And that's the thing about Tarantino, is you can totally identify Tarantino dialogue. Like he did punch up on scripts like Crimson Tide, where if you watch Crimson Tide, you can pick out the 2 or 3 scenes like, oh, that was Tarantino's, because he just has such a distinct voice to him.
Yes, honorable mention. If we had a fourth film and we count writing,
True Romance
is 100% in that pick. We're picking it. Doesn't matter. If you guys have never seen True Romance and you're a Tarantino fan, go out of your way to see True Romance. That was one of the things too. Like I said, Brian had to get me to watch it because it was like, oh, that's not a Tarantino movie. And you're like, it kind of is. Just watch it.
May as well be. Yeah.
Just watch it. And it's like, and kind of like with you, the first time I saw True Romance, I was like, it's fine. But later down the road, I watched it and then it grew on me, and I was like, oh my god, I fucking love this movie. But yes, those are our three actor, actress, and directors for this episode. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, I'm going to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. My review for Chippendale Rescue Rangers is out right now. Brian, you also saw the film. How did you think of it?
The short version is that the story is fine, Chippendale are fine, but there's so much else in that movie to pay attention to: the in-jokes, the cameos, the appearances. It just makes the movie a blast to watch.
Yeah,
that's all I'm
check out my review to find out what my thoughts were on it. Did you end up seeing Firestarter and Senior Year?
I did not watch Senior Year. The more I saw about it, the less interested I was in ever even checking that out. Firestarter I saw and don't bother checking it out. It's a waste of Zac Efron, and it's just
yeah, you and I both were like, we both felt bad for Zac Efron that he had to do this film. It's beneath him. It's something that he should have done like out of High School Musical, not something he should have been doing at this point in his career. And Senior Year is just a bad movie. Next week, Top Gun Maverick. Like I said, we'll definitely have a review for that. Maybe Brian will pop on for a review for that if it so sees fit. If not, we'll definitely have my review for it. And then we will also be back next week for, I keep forgetting the verbiage for this episode that we're doing. It's the Movie Crusaders Chat About. We will be talking about it's the Movie Crusaders alternate director's extended unrated cut redo. Basically, we're talking about all those things. So that's basically what the episode is. And then last week's episode where we talked about movie marketing is out. Very great episode. Brian and I talked about why movie marketers, how they do their trailers or posters or toys, all that kind of stuff. Really fun episode. We enjoyed talking about it. We hope you guys enjoyed watching it. But until next time, in case you don't see you, my name is Sean Waskrug. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Movie Crusaders. Until next time, like I said, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon. Again, I'm Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.